You wake up suddenly in the middle of the night. You look at the clock, and somehow it is always the same time. 3 in the morning, sometimes 3:15, sometimes 4 a.m. exactly, but always within the same narrow window every single time. You did not set an alarm, you did not drink water, you did not need the bathroom, and yet your eyes opened. You lie in the dark wondering why. This keeps happening, why this specific hour, why this exact same precision, night after night. Then you fall back asleep. The next morning you forget it happened, and 3 nights later your eyes open at the same time. Welcome to one of the most universal experiences in modern human life, and one of the most precisely engineered events happening inside you. Tonight, we explain why almost every adult on Earth wakes up at this specific hour and what their body is silently doing. We will reveal the chemical released into your bloodstream right before you wake, and exactly where in your body it comes from. We will explain why this specific window appears in folklore on every continent, under names that all mean roughly the same thing. We will show you why this hour was called the witching hour, the dead hour, the devil's hour by humans across millennia. And we will tell you why hospital records show this exact window as the moment when more humans die than any other time. The cause is not supernatural. The cause is not coincidence. The cause is a specific biological event you have never been told about. Your body has a hidden alarm clock buried deep in your brain that begins firing roughly 4 hours before your eyes should open. That hidden clock has been ticking inside every human ancestor for more than 100,000 years, and tonight you will finally see it. By the end of this video, the hour your grandmother feared and the hour your brain wakes you will become the same hour. Deep inside your brain, just above the place where the optic nerves cross, sits a tiny cluster of about 20,000 neurons. This cluster is called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, but you can simply think of it as the master clock running everything in your body. This clock receives signals from light entering your eyes during the day, and it uses that light to set its internal rhythm precisely. The clock then tells every cell, every organ, every gland in your body what time it is and what they should be doing. When morning approaches, the clock sends a wake-up command to a small almond-shaped gland sitting on top of each of your kidneys. That gland is called the adrenal gland, and it produces one of the most powerful chemicals your body can release into the bloodstream. The chemical is called cortisol, and most humans only hear about it in the context of stress, but its first job is older. Cortisol is the chemical that pulls you out of sleep, turns your body on at dawn, and makes you ready to face the day. It is the reason you can wake up before your alarm goes off, the reason your body knows when morning is approaching every day. The release does not begin when you wake up. The release begins hours before, in the deepest, darkest part of the entire night. Roughly 4 hours before you are supposed to open your eyes, your adrenal glands begin pumping cortisol into your blood in pulses. The pulses grow stronger every 15 minutes, slowly rising, slowly preparing your body to transition from sleep into full alert wakefulness. By the time you actually wake at 6 or 7 in the morning, your cortisol has been climbing steadily for hours behind the scenes. The peak of that release is reached just after you open your eyes, which is exactly why you feel alert almost immediately on waking. But the release begins in the dark, in silence, while you are still unconscious, and that is where the strange experience begins. The first true cortisol pulse arrives between 3 and 4 in the morning, with exact timing depending slightly on your usual sleep schedule. In that moment, your sleeping brain is in its lightest sleep phase, much closer to the surface of consciousness than it was hours earlier. If everything is functioning, normally, the cortisol pulse passes by without waking you. You stir slightly and slip back into deeper sleep. But if the pulse is even slightly too strong, if it arrives even slightly too fast, your conscious mind will surface to the air. You open your eyes for a moment, look at the clock, see the time, and that time will be the same for almost everyone. The release happens in every human, on every continent, every single night, with timing accuracy better than most expensive mechanical watches. 3 a.m. in your time zone is the exact same biological moment as 3 a.m. in someone else's time zone halfway around the world. Wherever you live, whatever your routine, your suprachiasmatic clock has synced your cortisol release to the rhythm of light and darkness. The reason you wake at the same time every night is the same neuron, in the same brain region, firing at the same time. This timing has been so consistent throughout human evolution that our ancestors gave it specific names without understanding what was causing it inside. They noticed there was an hour in the night when sleep felt thinner, when the body felt restless, when the mind would surface. They noticed that animals in their villages would become uneasy around the same time, that fires would burn lower, that babies would cry. They could not measure cortisol, they could not see the suprachiasmatic nucleus, but they could feel that something was happening in that hour. So they did what humans always do when they cannot explain a phenomenon. They invented a story that put a face on the event. And the face they put on it was, unsurprisingly, the face of evil itself walking among them in the dark of the night. In medieval Europe, this hour was known as the witching hour, the time when witches gathered, when demons walked, when the dead returned. The Catholic Church specifically warned monks not to be awake between 3 and 4 a.m. unless they were already deep in prayer or worship. That window was considered the inversion of 3 p.m., the hour Christ died on the cross, and therefore the hour most sacred to evil. In Russian folklore, this hour was called the Hour of the Wolf, named for when wolves were most likely to enter the village. Across China, this window was called the Hour of the Tiger, the second of the 12 traditional hours marking sleep and the new awakening. In old Japan, it was called Ushi mitsu doki, the hour between 2 and 3 a.m. when malevolent spirits were said to roam freely. In Mexican tradition, the hour was simply called la hora del diablo, the devil's hour, the time when humans should never look in mirrors. In Brazil, it was called a hora do cão, the hour of the dog, when stray dogs howled at things humans could not see. Every one of these traditions independently identified the exact same window of time as the most dangerous hour of the entire night, each night. None of these cultures knew about cortisol. None of them knew about the suprachiasmatic nucleus. None of them shared scientific knowledge with each other. And yet, across thousands of years and across every continent, the same hour was marked as the moment when reality felt thinner than usual. Modern researchers have studied why this happens, and the answer involves more than just cortisol working alone, in your sleeping body, in the dark. At this exact same window of time, your core body temperature reaches its lowest point of the entire 24-hour cycle, a critical fact. Your blood pressure is at its lowest. Your heart is beating slowly. Your breathing is shallow. Your immune system is least active right then. The body is, biologically speaking, at its most fragile state of the entire day, while simultaneously preparing to surge back into full wakefulness. It is a transition window, a vulnerable moment, when the engine of life is barely idling before being asked to start fully up again. Ancient humans, sleeping in caves and huts without modern medicine, would have noticed that this was when the sick and elderly often died. They would have noticed that this was when the very old slipped away, when the wounded stopped breathing, when babies were quietly lost, and from those observations across countless generations, they formed the cultural memory that this hour was somehow connected to death itself in the dark. They were right, just not for the supernatural reason they thought when they invented demons and witches and devils to explain it all. Modern hospital records, gathered from millions of deaths across decades, confirm one of the most disturbing patterns in human biology ever documented anywhere. More humans die between 3 and 5 in the morning than during any other window of the entire 24-hour day on Earth. The increase is not small, the increase is statistically significant, with peak mortality occurring at almost exactly 4 a.m. with consistent precision globally. Heart attacks spike, strokes spike, respiratory failure spike, and sudden cardiac deaths cluster heavily inside this narrow window during every single calendar day. The cause is the perfect storm of physiology happening inside the body during this specific time, a kind of biological cliff edge moment. Your blood is at its thickest from being still for hours, your heart is at its slowest, your pressure is at its lowest. The cortisol pulse arriving in that fragile state forces the cardiovascular system to suddenly accelerate from near rest into active morning functioning quickly. For a young, healthy body, this acceleration is harmless and unnoticed, and the body transitions smoothly into the brightening morning a few hours later. For an old body, a sick body, a weakened heart, the acceleration is sometimes the load that finally breaks the entire system completely. The hour your ancestors called the dead hour is, in cold statistical truth, exactly the hour during which most humans on Earth actually die. They had no hospital records, no death certificates, no circadian biology textbooks to read or to learn from, only their own observations. They simply lived among each other, they buried each other, and they noticed the pattern that science would only confirm thousands of years later. The witching hour and the death hour are the same hour, and both are caused by the same chemical doing the same job inside. There is one specific group of humans for whom this nightly cortisol pulse becomes much more than just a brief and quiet biological event. If you currently live with chronic anxiety, ongoing depression, recent trauma, or sustained financial stress, your baseline cortisol is already running elevated daily. Your body is already producing more of the chemical than it should, and your nightly pulse is therefore larger, sharper, and far more sudden. The pulse that would pass unnoticed in a calm body wakes you fully into a dark, silent room at 3 in the morning. You sit up, look at the clock, see the time, and your already anxious mind begins to spiral immediately into worry and dread. The worry triggers more cortisol. The cortisol prevents sleep from returning, and you spend the next 2 hours wide awake until dawn finally arrives. This is why anxiety and 3 a.m. wakings travel together, why depression often arrives at this hour, why trauma surfaces hardest in the dark. The biology of the moment makes the mind more vulnerable. The chemical loosens emotional control. The loneliness of the time deepens every existing fear. If you have ever woken at this hour and felt a wave of dread arrive for no reason, you now know the reason. Your suprachiasmatic clock released its signal, your adrenal gland responded, and your conscious mind woke up directly inside the rising cortisol storm. Tonight, when you turn off the light and drift away into sleep, your master clock is already counting down the hours to that pulse. Around 3 or 4 a.m., your adrenal glands will release the same chemical they have released every single night of your entire life. If your body is healthy and your mind is calm, the chemical will pass through you unnoticed, and you will sleep until morning peacefully. If you are stressed, anxious, or recently changed sleep patterns, you will likely open your eyes for a moment and check the bedside clock. The clock will show roughly the same time it has shown the last time this happened to you, perhaps months or perhaps years ago, and for one brief moment in the darkness, you share an experience with every human ancestor who ever lived and felt afraid at night. Because tonight, just like 10,000 years ago, the witching hour is exactly when the body decides to begin waking itself up again.